Hey race fans, welcome back to another episode of Buckle Up, an ultra running conversation. Mandy, are you buckled down for the weather anomaly that's coming your way here in Western or in
Yeah, you can't see it, but I took all of the sandbags from my trailer that we use for race equipment and they're strapped to my feet because apparently it's wind apocalypse coming our way. Do you have any of these warnings, Brian? Is it hitting your side of the
We have a
state?
lot less. I think I lived over in the Front Range for a year, Front Range of Denver, which is considered like Colorado Springs all the way up to Fort Collins and like Cheyenne, Wyoming, that whole area. The plain before the Rocky Mountains really just picked right up. So for those of you listening that don't really understand what I say, Front Range is the eastern side of Denver, eastern side of the state, Denver area, northern Colorado, and Colorado Springs, which is south. I live on the western slope, which is up over the mountains and western facing. So I'm on the down slope towards the Utah state line. So in the western slope, we have mountains that break up a lot of the wind, and so it's less obnoxious. I do live pretty high up out of town, so I personally get a lot of wind. But if I went to town, it gets wispy and windy, but not nearly as bad. When I lived on the Front Range, I think I told the story a few weeks ago, but I jumped on my bike. I rode to like Longmont from Loveland, and on my road bike. Man, I was like, man, I should probably be in the Tour de France. I am just crushing this thing. And I turned around and I realized why I got there so fast is because there was like a 25-mile-an-hour
Uh-huh.
wind at my back. And when
Yeah.
I turned around, I had to pedal back home in that wind. So yeah, so I do remember those wind anomalies. But it sounds like you got a big one coming up. So I hope you guys
Yeah,
stay
we do. And
safe.
actually, I'm most concerned about my run tomorrow. So, depending on where the wind direction is coming, stay tuned for my Strava because I will literally probably run with the wind to my back and then I'm going to catch an Uber or phone a friend to get back home.
Set those segment crowns, right? Those segment course records and stuff like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be looking for those on your Strava and your Training Peaks. Speaking of Training Peaks, I got into this space quite a while ago, and Training Peaks has always been at the forefront of the coaching level. I really enjoy working with the platform and the app. And in the vein of all that, there's like coaching and um, coaching like mentorship and programs along those lines. And we met through UESCA, which is United Endurance Sports Coaching Academy, at their annual conference. I guess in 2 years ago now, we went to the conference for 2 years. But we also met our guest today there, Jason Koop. Should be no stranger to this, to the listener here, but Koop has been in the space. Jason Koop's been in the space, gosh, 20 plus years, 25 years, if not longer. He started out as a cycling triathlon coach, which he shares with us in this podcast episode, and has worked his way through the ranks and is just coming out with some remarkable coaching apps. And so we really kind of dive into Koop AI today and kind of dissect a little bit more about exactly what Koop AI is and what you could expect from the platform. I, for one, Mandy, I'm going to go jump into it and kind of just poke around and see what it looks like in there and what's available.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. There's such AI is such a buzzword these days, but I'm knowing Coop's work and everything that he's put into everything he's produced for the sport. If you're listening and you are a UESCA coach or you've been coached by someone who's trained by UESCA, Coop contributed and wrote that certification and continues to produce continued education content around it. All of his methods are very science based. I also got UESCA certified. Just appreciated the longevity of the content that Coop puts out there. He's careful to make sure that he's not throwing out trendy things that might change. Very well known, very successful. A lot of key athletes this year under Coop's coaching belt, as well as other coaches that he's trained and mentored. So I'm really excited to see the quality that this app or this Koop AI produces for athletes and where it goes in the future.
In addition to Koop AI in that conversation, we talk about where Koop's at with life, what's been going on in the past year and a half, and a little bit about coaching and the sport itself, and where he sees those things in the next 3, 5, 10 years, and with the growth and events. So yeah, it's a great listen. I will end it before the show starts. Our little banter here with the Training Essentials, second edition, Training Essentials for Ultra Running by Jason Koop, which is basically the backbone of the UESCA Ultra Running Coach certification. But I asked Koop to personally autograph this for me. As the
What's to
gentleman that he
say?
is, he did. And so I kind of set him up for it, but I'll read it first and then I'll explain what happened. So he says, "Hey, Brian, best of luck beating me at any event. See you at the finish line. I hope this book inspires your ultra training, Koop. And so I set him up for that. He is not that harsh or mean about beating me, although I have never beat Koop at the races that he has shown up for. But I put him up for that. So on his app or on his website, I asked him to personalize the book and asked what I would like him to say. So I put him up to that, and he thought it was pretty funny. He emailed me back and said he got a kick out of my personalized message.
Yeah, that makes me. Were you at the conference last year when Coop and I think it was Tony faced each other at the Colorado Springs? Did the half?
Yeah.
Did they do the half, or maybe the 10K or the 5K? Maybe we didn't have
I
time
can't
for the
imagine
half
that it
because
was the
the conference
half.
started.
Yeah,
Coop
it
will
was
have to
either
tell
the
us.
5K or the 10K. Yes, Mandy, I was totally there. I do remember that. It was the half marathon. I think it was like a race weekend, downtown Colorado Springs, October. But I believe they raced the 5K or the 10K. I don't think it was the full half because we had conferences scheduled that afternoon as well. But it was our friend Tony, the videographer, and Coop made a small wager. And I believe Coop won, if I'm not mistaken.
He did, and I actually have a photo of it, so I'll share that with you as well. It was a fun finish, but it made me think. I think you should just invite him back to a local 5K maybe. So Coop, there's your
I know, but
challenge.
I don't know. It's true. I'd have to. Maybe I'll start training now. Maybe he'll use his own app to beat him. Maybe that's what I'll try to do.
I love that.
Mandy and I will be hanging out pretty soon here at Across the Years. It is a 6-day race starting 3 days before the New Year's and ending 3 days after the New Year. So hence the name Across the Years. It is in Peoria, Arizona, and I am looking for some good weather. I bet you're looking to get out of the wind, but if you're around, come and say hi, stop in. I think Mandy's going to be there first, if I'm not mistaken. You're going to show up a
Yeah, I'll
little
probably
early?
be showing up on the 29th, and we'll stay until after Nick's done running the last person standing. So we'll be there for some days. Come and say hi, take a picture with Brian and I. I'm excited to see everybody.
Come say hi. We'll be hanging out, and I'll be there on the 30th. I'll be volunteering. I'll be in and out of the venue. I'm going to go do my own training little block weekend and just get some miles in for my next race, which I'll talk about later. But without further ado, here's Jason Koop. Thanks for listening. Take care. Jason Koop, it's an honor to have you on the show today. We appreciate you taking some time out of your evening, I think it is maybe, your evening to chat with us about what you're up to.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It is evening here in Les Houches, France, and the honor is all mine. I love talking about coaching and athlete development and anything related to those topics.
So Jason, you are far away from us. How's it going over there? Are you loving it? Missing Colorado wind we were just talking about? Any of that?
Yeah, no, now that you guys are mentioning what you guys are going through today, definitely not missing it all that much. Yeah, big transition year for me in 2025. I relocated to Chamonix, France, most notoriously, at least for this conversation, most notoriously home of UTMB and Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc. That was after living in Colorado for 20 years, starting my career, the only career that I ever knew there. And like big transition, but super happy here. It's winter here. Definitely a different environment. Definitely very French. I'm learning all about the French bureaucracies and inefficiencies as compared to what I was previously used to in the States. But it's been nothing but wonderful.
I don't want to dive too far down that rabbit hole, but it's probably got to be one and the same. I mean, government has its problems anywhere you go, right?
You're absolutely right, Brian. Like you can find problems wherever you go if you're looking for them, or you can find the wonderful parts in life wherever you're looking for them. 100%.
I want to take a step back a little bit, and I know you had a big transition year this year, but you've been transitioning on Koop AI for a few years as well, right? So I think maybe 3 years it's been in the works.
Yeah,
and it kind of transpired, and we listened to the podcast, but it's been a minute. I want to say it was around June or so, just before UTMB, where you had a podcast where you talked about the structure and the workings of it, and I just want to maybe revisit that and maybe dive a little bit deeper into exactly what Koop AI is.
Yeah, it's probably the opposite of every other AI project that you see out there that moves fast and breaks things and is just like progressing at the speed of light. This has been very slow progress. The goal from the onset, though, has always been the same. It's basically to put my brain in a box and have that machine, have that coaching machine, be accessible to everybody at the highest level. And we've been working on it for 3 years. It's been spearheaded by my good friend and confidant, Bennett Messia. You guys should have him on the podcast. He's a brilliant mind. And I'm really happy with where it's at. It delivers programming remarkably accurately compared to what I would actually deliver programming based on a fairly wide range of athlete scenarios. It adjusts that programming just like I would adjust the programming. It provides feedback very similar to how I would provide feedback. It does all relatively seamless for the user. It's still very small scale. It's a small team that's working on it. It is not Amazon. It's literally two people, working 70 to 80 hours a week for peanuts, trying to get it off the ground. It's very small and endemic. It's not going to, take over the world and challenge OpenAI or, Perplexity or any of these other like big AI companies. It's going to stay within trail and ultra running and just kind of like sit there. But I'm really happy. I'm really happy with it. And more importantly, I'm kind of like bullish on the future because I do realize that these things they always change and morph into formats that you never really expect when you take on a project like this. You can start it with this concept of trying to put my brain and my philosophy kind of in a box, and then it morphs into something that's like slightly different than that. That's slightly different than that initial kind of like onset. That's just the way of the world and software development very specifically, and then AI very kind of within that niche as well. As you really kind of know wherever it's going to go, you got to go where your customers kind of like want you to go. But needless to say, I'm super bullish on it. I'm a big fan of the technology as a whole and what it can provide specifically to ultra running in this case, and I'm happy to be a part of the kind of the revolution into that technology.
Yeah, Coop, Brian and I have heard you speak on AI and these topics in coaching at a few different conferences that we've all been to. So I can imagine just hearing your thoughts on AI and the development of it firsthand, how careful you're being about what you put into this, making sure that the output is accurate and is going to be used correctly and not misinterpreted. So tell us a little bit about what does it mean? How do you put your brain into this box? Are you using real life examples of your current athletes that you're coaching? Are you coming up with scenarios that you guys are talking through? I know it's a probably really loaded question, but
Yeah,
surface level.
yeah. I mean, I can like back up a little bit, right? Like when I first started on this project, I really wasn't a skeptic of what it could do or what the technology was. And the origin, which I've discussed on my podcast before, was I was actually at a business coaches conference. So people who are like business coaches to C-suite level executives in Fortune 500 companies. So it's kind of parallel to what I do as an endurance coach, as an ultramarathon coach. And part of the topic of discussion there amongst these other coaches was, the big bad machines, are they going to kind of like take us over? And I've learned throughout the course of my career that wherever there's fear in the marketplace, it's usually opportunity, because you're not going to stop technology. Technology is going to develop irrespective of how scared you are of it and what the positives and negatives are. It's just a big tour de force to watch out for and to ultimately play a part of. And so it was at that point in time where I started to figure it out, because I'm not an expert in that area. And so I did what I always did, and I reached out to my network, and I found people who knew the space very well, found a few trusted confidants in the area, and started to flesh out the idea. And there were really kind of two risks, that I saw. The first one was just a risk of capital, right? It takes a little bit of investment dollars to put forth any sort of new project, and that wasn't something that I was really scared about. I could allocate a certain amount of funds to developing this, and we could kind of contain that with really smart business structure and having the right people behind it and things like that. So I kind of eliminated that risk. And the second risk, which I'm still very conscientious of because it's a never evolving it's a never evolving theme, is just reputational risk. You put bad product out in the marketplace, whether that's an article or a podcast or athlete results, most which is probably like closer to me, that does present reputational risk in this really small ecosystem that we have. And so the primary way around it is we decided to bite this off in really small chunks. First, we would say, okay, how are we going to do the onboarding? That's the first thing coach does when they have a new athlete. They have all this data that that you have access to. How do you slice and dice it and make sense of it? Second thing is, how do you actually generate the program? Like, what philosophy are you going to use as the backbone of how the technology spits out programming? And very serendipitously, and fortunately for me, I have a really strong backbone of that philosophy in all of the content that I've produced over the years, which has been incredibly consistent and I would kind of consider robust. It's the book, the podcast, all the lectures and content and continuing education and coach development and things like that I've developed over my professional career. They all became this spine of this philosophy that was baked into this technological product that delivers programming advice for endurance athletes. But we decided to keep it contained within that. And this is part of the issue with AI in general, with a lot of the hallucinations that you see and knowledge creep and bringing in bad sources of information. We decided to kind of eliminate a lot of, if not all of that, by siloing off the information that the machine has access to as to the information that I kind of vet. And what we built it does a remarkably good job at it, where if you ask it a question or if you ask it to generate programming, it's kind of sourcing the spine of information that I was referencing earlier. So we took that very deliberately and very slowly, and prioritized the information first and the style second, which is kind of just probably more emblematic of me than anything else, where it's very much substance over style. The first iterations were not very pretty. They were actually pretty ugly, and a lot of users kind of gave us that feedback of just like they didn't look very good, and it was kind of clunky, and they didn't like the font, and they didn't like the color, and all that. But the content within it was really quite good, and you can fix style very very easily. That's a way easier problem to solve for than the substance side of it. So we're really happy with that piece of iteration, and now we're working on more of what programmers would call UI UX, user interface and user experience. And what most normal people would just see, what you actually look at, what you actually see across the computer screen or across the phone in front of you. We're kind of working on that element right now. But the whole umbrella, Mandy, to kind of like answer your question really simplistically, is we've taken a very slow, iterative approach on trying to develop this, where we focus on the things that matter the most to me and to the athletes that kind of interface with it, and my personal reputation and things like that. And then we kind of like left other things to develop, in the future. And like I said, I'm pretty happy with where it's at right now.
Koop, as a user, I sign up on Koop AI. I pay the monthly subscription. I'm sure the onboarding, just as you mentioned, has to be really in depth, because that's where it's getting its information from for future use, like to build the program out. What does the platform look like? Is it partnered on top or layered on top of one, like Training Peaks or a Strava or something along those lines? What type of platform would I expect to be using?
Yeah, right now it's its own self-contained platform. Like, it doesn't really deviate outside of, it's not like delivered through Training Peaks or through Strava or anything like that. That's what the user interfaces with. Now in the background, we tie into Strava to initially gather some of the training, just the same way that I would onboard an athlete. I do a big data dump either through the native devices or through Strava, or a combination of both, depending upon where the information actually sits. And then the files can actually be fetched from Strava's API as well. So it's not like you're manually uploading files and things like that. Those were problems that we had to deal with in the early 2000s when I first started coaching. But fortunately, due to a lot of the API wiring, we don't have to deal with them now. But it's its own self-contained app. And once again, as technology develops and as software develops, who knows if that's going to continue to be its own self-contained app, or it's a part of one of the bigger app ecosystems or not. I honestly don't know where that's going to go. We're currently focused on the current development path, which is keeping it as a self-contained app that's specific for trail runners, and something that trail runners very particularly would like, as opposed to the broader like ecosystem of endurance athletes, which a lot of the other apps are trying to serve right now, as triathletes, runners, cyclists, and hydrox athletes are now kind of like coming into those ecosystems as well. We're trying to stay in our silo and try to stay in our really small pool that we play in, and one that I think that we actually play really well in.
I know that when we listened to the podcast early on, you were talking about developing plans specifically for, or integrating in specific technology and plans for races. Have you developed that further?
Yeah, that's already in there. That's what we set from the
Okay.
onset is you can put any race in under the sun, and we with certain races we're able to automatically fetch the data of the race, the elevation gain, elevation loss, the time that it should take you, and things like that, and use that as a component of the programming that's generated. With other races, as you guys know, there's an infinite amount of races out there and permutations of those races. With the ones that we can't fetch, is manual entry. Hey, listen, this is about what I expect to finish in. Here's how long it is. Here's the duration, on and on and on. It takes that information kind of in a similar way and generates programming. But it has to be that way, right? I mean, fundamentally, when you're Andy, I mean, you're very well aware of this as a coach. Both of you guys are as coaches. Is you have to know who is coming to the table, how long they've been training for, what their training profile is, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and on and on and on. You have to know what they're training for, what the properties of the race are, what the athlete's goals are specific to that race, and things like that. And then you use training to kind of build a bridge between those 2 points. That's really the fundamental like guts of where we started is how to kind of solve, how to solve for that problem utilizing the information set that I've created and the technology that's out there that really enables the information set.
Coop, how does this play with the behind the scenes type of thing? Are you with AI for myself in my personal experience, which is very, very limited, using Gemini to help me write an email or something like that to sound more professional, if I'm being honest. But do you have, and I have to reread the email though, right? To make sure it's me or it sounds like me or and it's accurate information. Are you having to do that yourself behind the scenes with the use of this platform just to kind of keep a tab on it or what does that look
Yeah.
like?
So certainly there's always quality control that goes on with any type of content generation, which is, I think, a good way to think about this. Right? You have content generation that's happening automatically based on a set of inputs. The set of inputs being the inputs that the athlete gives it and the inputs of the race. And you have to quality control that every so often through a variety of different mechanisms. And we did that very early on. And the way that we did it is really it's not too different from the way we would actually train our own human coaches, where we would give them a case study and say, generate programming for this case study. Tell me what you think, what's going to be important, how you're going to lay out the annual training or the long range planning, how you're going to lay out the short range planning and things like that. And then we would benchmark that against our master coaches. That was our series of
Sure.
training a lot of coaches. And we did this and we did this with the AI product in a very similar way, where I picked one of our master coaches and I used myself as another master coach, and we would give it case scenarios and see what it generated and see how it adapted to that programming based on the scenarios that we could throw at it, and it does really well. Like, I mean, I'm not afraid of being replaced by technology. I'm not afraid of being largely replaced, I guess is a better way to put it, by technology, and it's actually kind of remarkable. Now, it's not perfect, and to date it does a really good job at the program generation, a really good job at the program iteration or revision. It does a poor job at being a human because it's not a human. It's a large language model, and is it going to deliver the same human contextual quality content that I would deliver to one of my athletes on the phone or via WhatsApp video call or anything like that? Yeah, probably not. But I'm not going to rule that out. I mean, that's the kind of the fear amongst a lot of human service providers is eventually the technology gets so good it can read emotion and learn how to respond in a similar way from a psycho-emotional standpoint as a human would actually do. I'm not going to rule that out. I mean, one of the things that I've been doing in the background is trying to capture that and train a model that would eventually be able to, first off, help me with that. Like, as a very realistic example, I log a lot of the transcripts that I have between myself and the athletes that I work with. And this is not, special to me. There's a lot of AI note takers that are actually out there. But instead of just relying on the AI note takers, I'll take the transcript and I'll run it through the spine of information that I have, kind of created. It's basically a canonized version of all the content that I've created over the years. I'll take that conversation and those transcripts and I'll run it through this spine of information to generate athlete summaries for me. And what that helps me do is when I get on the phone with an athlete, first off, jar my rusty memory as to what we talked about the last time or last month or the month or the month before that, because I've got a lot of things floating around in my mind. I can't instantly recall everything. But secondly, it puts me in the right headspace to actually talk to an athlete about the things that matter the most to them. And I think that that's actually incredibly powerful and a really good use of the model and some of the things that we've developed. But my point with all of that is like, right now the hero in the whole program is the program generation. Does a great job. Does a great job with that. It's not perfect. Does a really, really good job with that. I'm not going to rule out it handling a lot of the coaching piece of it. In addition to that, years down the line, I don't know what that time frame actually is, but this kind of the sky's the limit on it. Like, who knows how it's actually going to evolve.
And so are you essentially hands off? I mean, other than checking the model and checking on, I'm sure it's your baby and you're in there and just checking on it. But are you hands off on the athletes, or are you still checking in with them on a human level, just like you were
I'm
saying?
100% hands off. 100%. I don't think I've touched an athlete anything since the very, 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 very beginning of it. Maybe the first 10 athletes or anything like that. I completely let the model kind of evolve. I brought on one of our coaches to kind of like do that for the entire ecosystem of athletes. And even he's kind of like taking a step back now because it kind of handles things really well. I'm very, very, very hands off right now, and I can't. And that sounds kind of, I'm sure that sounds kind of weird to the listeners, because I mentioned the reputational risk earlier. It's kind of like my body of work and things like that. But that's kind of how well it works. Like, to be honest with you, I'm not saying that it's perfect, and I'm not saying that it's not going to get better, because it's not perfect and it will get better. But the fact of the matter is I'm constantly in there tinkering and tweaking and, oh crap, this is wrong, blah blah blah. I wouldn't have shipped the product in the first place. So we only shipped the product because I was fully confident in what it would deliver across the scope of athletes that we think we can kind of deliver it for. Those things kind of go hand in hand. I'm not going to make athletes the guinea pigs. Like, I'm a coach first and foremost. Like, athletes are the most important person to me, right? They're my customer. They're the people that I care about the most. They're my livelihood. I'm not going to make them guinea pigs in my like business ventures or anything like that. That would be kind of unethical of me to do so. So when I ship products out or when I put content out in the world, I'm doing it for the athletes that are actually out there. It's not for my own like edification or anything else like that. Yeah, long-winded answer to your question, Brian. I'm very, very, very hands off, and the reason for that is I'm pretty confident with what it does, and I'm confident also in the kind of the guardrails that we've put on it to make sure that we get the right athletes in. They're training for the right events and things like that, and it's not going to it's going to do athletes net positive and not negative.
Well, while I still have a job, Koop, as a coach, before you run me out of this field here with this AI model, that sounds great. Honestly, I'm totally interested in it. I want to go on there. I'm probably going to tinker in it later today, for sure, because I've been meaning to too as well. But I am a full-time coach. I am in this space. I am ultra running specific. I get the occasional triathlete or the marathoner, but pretty much ultra running is my thing. And typically, I see the both of you guys. I've seen the both of you guys. I spent a couple of days with you guys in October in the past couple of years at a conference that no longer is being offered. And so my question is like kind of a change shift to just general coaching and the ultra running space and where we're at, knowing your history with it. How do coaches evolve in this space in this time as a solo entrepreneur? How do you see that working? I know you're with CTS, which is a huge, just product and robust coaching knowledge that just speaks volumes. But as a solo entrepreneur in this space, how do you see others trying to survive and better themselves and doing CEUs and just kind of upping their own game in this space?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's been a kind of mission of mine really for the second half of my coaching career. The first half of my coaching career, I was just figuring out how to not screw it up, and just try to get better. Second half of my coaching career, I'm trying to get better, but I'm also trying to like lift the rest of the tide up around me. And you've seen the very deliberate acts in that, and putting together certification, partnering with USCA, putting together certification, putting together all these continuing educations, and kind of taking this mentorship and leadership role within CTS, and also people who kind of like reach out to me. And I do believe that the very cliche rising tide raises all ships here. It wasn't that long ago where I was woefully unimpressed with the state of ultra running coaching, woefully unimpressed. And I did think that, with all due respect to the people who are out there, that it wasn't that negative for the athletes. There were people that were in it for the wrong reasons, that didn't have the right background, that didn't have the right education, that, were doing athletes a disservice instead of a service. And that's really tragic, because if you think about, what an athlete is asking a coach to do, they're taking command of their time and their effort. And those are two extremely precious commodities in somebody's life. And when you have practitioners in the field that are kind of not respecting those two things, I kind of take that seriously. I do believe that, just as much as a rising tide raises all ships, lowering tide kind of sinks them. And the state of the coaching industry can certainly be like that. We saw that in cycling, kind of in the early 2000s, where the state of cycling coaching wasn't very good, and it was kind of bringing everybody down. And the collective group of cycling coaches, Chris Carmichael, Joe Friel, Dirk Friel, and kind of the like, they brought everybody up. They kind of put them on their backs and brought everybody up. And I thought that was a real cool thing. I got to kind of play witness to that. And I do think that there's a parallel there in ultra running, where maybe 10 years ago, the collective group of ultra running coaches really wasn't all that good. They were inexperienced. Not a lot of them were full-time professionals. And in many, many cases, they're doing athletes a disservice. I wouldn't say that now. I would say that right now, the coaches out there are most of them are high quality. They're doing athletes service. Their hearts are in the right place. They can make a living at it, which is something that is also a pretty important thing that is a little bit newer. And I think whenever you have an ecosystem that is that robust, and this is being the ecosystem of coaching, there are many different ways to play in the pool. You can play in the pool with one-on-one coaching, which is what I do. That's my bread and butter. I have one athlete, I have 40 athletes, and I get on the phone with them every week and deliver a training program and things like that. You can play in the pool by delivering static training programs. That happens a lot. That happens through Training Peaks. That happens through a number of different vehicles. You can play in the pool by kind of doing it part-time, but really investing in your athletes. You have an athlete load of 15 to 25 athletes. You're really highly invested in them. It's not a side gig. It's like a significant portion of your income, and you can kind of choose to do that wherever. And you can have AI and automated models, which is, kind of at the forefront and what I'm trying to develop. But you can only have that kind of spread of things if the ecosystem is really robust enough. So I'm actually kind of bullish on where coaching is going, when I wasn't very bullish on it, maybe 10 years ago. And I think that says a lot for just the maturity of trail and ultra running as a whole. It's kind of gotten there. I tell the story a lot on podcasts and things like that. So you guys will have to forgive me if you've heard it before, but maybe your listeners haven't. When I started out as a cycling and triathlon coach and did very little run coaching, even though I was a kind of runner by background and by trade. And very early on, I realized, and this is kind of in the early 2000s, I realized that there was a market for ultramarathon coaches, because there are none out there, or very, very, very few out there. And so I kind of traveled across the country, both physically and virtually, and I tried to get elite athletes to start to be coached for free. I'd do it, based off of my reputation. I'm not going to charge you and things like that. I think it's good for you. It's a complicated sport. It had all the kind of elements that were really ripe for coaching to make a really big impact. It's complicated. It's new. You can use a second set of eyes on things, on and on and on. Much like triathlon, kind of flourished with when coaches came into the mix. Mm-hmm. I was routinely laughed at when I went around the circuit and did that by a lot of really, really popular and well-known people and entities. And I gave up on the idea for maybe 3 or 4 years after that very humbling experience. And I don't know why. Maybe the market wasn't ready. Maybe I wasn't ready as a coach. Maybe a combination of kind of everything, wasn't really in my favor. But to see it come full circle, where I literally just finished this piece for Ultra Running Magazine this morning. So sorry, Amy, if I'm spoiling the plot line on an article that won't come out for another couple months. But it's how these high performance coaching models that we've developed over the course of the past few years. It's how these high performance coaching models have really become prevalent and pervasive in the elite field. So not only is it coaching, is it one-on-one coaching, it's wrapping an entire team of professionals around an elite athlete. And so to see that about face and then evolution of the entire space has actually been really cool, kind of a really cool thing to see. And I think something that I can kind of look at and say, you know what, I played a little bit of a part in it, and it's a little bit of point of pride to kind of be honest with you.
Yeah, results speak for themselves. I mean, you've had an incredible year with a lot of athletes, and we're seeing a rise in just a change in the sport. So, I mean, do you attribute a lot of these new course records being broken, new people showing up to toe the line that are just crushing it out there? I mean, how much of that do you attribute to the rise in the talents of the coaches, and how much coaches are getting better and that field is growing?
Well, it's everything. No, I mean, certainly we're getting better athletes in as a whole because of the sport's popularity. They can earn a living in it, things like that. My good friend Kelly Newland, who's serving as agent for a lot of the athletes, is kind of attested to in a lot of her content that, you know, the money out there is pretty reasonable. It's not like nobody's going to become a zillionaire off of it or anything like that, but it's pretty darn reasonable income after it's all said and done. So we're getting better athletes in the sport. We have a better knowledge base to work off of. Ultra running's more of a mature sport now than it was 10 or 15 years ago. We know a lot more about it. There's a lot more research behind it and things like that. There are more good practitioners in the area. There are more good coaches. There are more good nutritionists, more good strength training coaches and things like that. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. You're seeing just kind of I talked about that rising tide. You're seeing that rising tide in all areas. It's not just one or the other. And I really do think that those things kind of go in concert with each other. All those things improve, and they ultimately improve the athlete. All those things don't get any better, and the athletes get worse. You look at the professionalism, the money that's available, the stuff that all the brands are selling and things like that. When all those are going up, everything's going up. When all those are going down, everything's going down. And the contrast to that in the endurance world, just to bring this up, is cycling, right? Cycling's been kind of taking a nosedive year after year for like the last decade. All the manufacturers are not doing very well. all the cycling teams are kind of like struggling more than they used to kind of like make ends meet. The participation is down and things like that. So there is a momentum to these things. And I think what you're seeing on the performance side of things, yeah, I'd like to say that, we're putting together really good teams and really good strategies for athletes. And we've got great practitioners amongst our high performance teams and things like that. And I do wholeheartedly believe that that's true. But also, I'm intellectually honest that there's a bigger tailwind that is also at play. That's just affecting everybody. It's kind of undeniable.
Yeah, I love that. I've seen it too. Obviously, I just hanging out and being a spectator in cycling alone. Plus, we don't have like that great American hope right now,
It's
at least
hard.
stateside. It's hard, right?
Hard.
I mean,
It's hard.
we had a huge push, and that was kind of obviously a debacle. It turned out to be a mess by the end of it, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Where do you see ultra running just generally as a participant, from the participant point of view is how I should say it. Where do you see ultra running going in the next 3, 5, 10 years? We're growing exponentially. We're kind of like popping at the seams. There's 3 to 10 races every weekend. Is this sustainable? Like where do you see us potentially winding up?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on where you are in the world. So in the U.S., the demand is going to start to outstrip the supply more quickly because the supply side is constrained by the Forest Service, national parks, and things like that. So the demand side is going to continue to increase, but the supply side is limited, and that leads to just friction, right? I mean, you just look at, we just had lotteries last weekend, the Hard Rock Lottery and the Western States Lottery. I'm gonna evoke my good friend Ken Klober, the former race director of the Leadville Trail 100, and say the boohoo to yippee ratio, which is what he coined as whenever he would draw the lottery by hand, as the number of people that didn't get into the race, the number of people that did get into the race, that's getting out of proportion and out of sync. And in the U.S., it's certainly going to continue to be true because of this ultimate like very fundamental supply cap that we have on the races. You can only put so many races that have a permit cap of 200 or 300 athletes. That's just not a sustainable. It's just not a sustainable model. If you go over to Asia, as by contrast, and in particular in China, where they have fewer restrictions on that, they can satiate that demand. They can put up races. They can put up races with multiple thousands of people, where multiple thousands of people can kind of participate. There's a huge landmass to do that on. There's a big workforce to take advantage of. This sounds very bad. There's a huge workforce that can like put those races together, and there's a lot of capital that any number of entities can kind of put behind it, so they can kind of keep up with the demand. They don't see a lot of these supply side problems that we see in the US because of kind of all those factors. And then Europe is somewhere in the middle, right? Where there's all these iconic races that fill up very quickly that are, they're limited. Their UTMB is going to have 2,000 some odd athletes in it per event that they have. And they're going to have 5 to 10 times the number of people apply for those races. So it kind of just a little bit of it just depends on where you live. But I think when you look at it net on net, there are going to be more people that come into the ecosystem than you have ways to satiate for that demand. Inevitably that takes us to a place where a lot of these races, and more so than what we're accustomed to right now, are just extremely coveted, right? They're hard to get into. They sometimes take years to build up a portfolio to work into and things like that. And it's just one of those things where I just think that the community of trail and ultra runners are just going to have to kind of get used to it. It's going to be the new norm, where you're waiting for a race for 3 or 4 or 5 years for you to actually gain entry into it, regardless of what the entry system actually looks like. I just think that that's an inevitability with this like supply demand problem coming up, and it's really up to the people that are at the choke point of that supply side problem to come up with solutions to that, because ultimately that's not sustainable. If you have a lot of people that are pent up on doing whatever races they are, there's only a certain amount of time that can transpire before they become disillusioned with the opportunity. And I think that it's kind of up to the collective group of the service providers that are trying to satiate that demand to come up with ways to alleviate those different types of choke points in order to create a healthier ecosystem overall for the long run.
Yeah, Jason, I'll speak to that just as a race director. So I don't coach anymore just because I decided 2 races wasn't enough to put on, and now I do 12. So my plate is overfull on that one. But I just got back from the US Trail Conference in early November, I guess. And it's interesting because that is definitely part of the conversation. And so I'm sitting next to Dale at that conference, right? And other race directors who have races with lotteries and a limited cap, and it takes years to get in, and their problems are very, very different than the problems of other race directors like myself who have newer races. And there's so many things in that industry right now that are so different on both fronts. And I think you're right, and we're all trying to collectively figure out those problems. Like, we all have limits when it comes to permits. US Forest Service, our permitting fees are going up, our costs are going up, our sanitation costs, transportation, everything to get runners to that start line. And so when we're capped at 50, 100, 200 runners, and then you're a smaller race and you don't have the exposure, you don't have the big brands and the big sponsor dollars to cover all of those costs, those are the races that are struggling to stay around because we just can't do it, but then you've got like the bigger races who have this huge waiting list and all of the demand. So it's an interesting time to figure that out, because like Brian said, there are so many ultras and trail races to choose from every single weekend, but the sustainability part and the fact that, getting volunteers today is super difficult. Like that trend is really on the struggle bus with a lot of race directors. And now if you are an avid, ultra trail volunteer, you now have 5 races to choose from in your region that weekend versus 1 to go and volunteer at. So it's an interesting time to try to serve this budding crowd of runners.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that it's, once again, like I have the opportunity to travel the world looking at all these races, and from a race management perspective, they're all so incredibly different depending upon what area of the world you actually go to. There's just a huge range of things, and I think that that's ultimately good for the consumer whenever you have choice and variety, as opposed to like a homogenous product. I think that that's ultimately good. I still think, though, that at the tail of all of this inevitable supply demand problem comes to like a little bit of a friction point. And I don't know when that is, but I do kind of see the writing on the wall, maybe a decade or 2 from now, to where there's just so many people and there's only so many places you can put them, and there's only so many trails that you can kind of put them on kind of around the world. And do the people that are coming into the ecosystem, or the people don't come into the ecosystem because of this kind of inevitable like friction point that gets created over long periods of time, and the fact that you can't add capacity at the same rate as the demand gets added.
I mean, I know you've been around Koop for forever in the space, and I showed up in 2010 before Leadville was a lottery, but we only had one or two, maybe three lotteries at the most back in the day, and that was Plan A. And now I have athletes that I'm coaching when they didn't get into Plan A, one of those top three races. Now we're going to Plan B, which is still another set of lotteries, and so like this trickle down effect is just kind of crazy from a history perspective. It's just kind of insane that now we have like a Plan B set of lotteries that we're looking at, and all these,
and Plan C, and then you have Plan B and Plan C and Plan D to get into the races, and this is like then you have closed entry systems.
Yeah, it's kind of insane. But what is in the future for you, Koop, as an individual? I know you've been in the scene quite a bit. I haven't seen you racing quite a bit. You've had a challenging year, like you've already mentioned. Will you be back towing a line here soon? Will we see you at any events coming up, or what's the deal with your fitness level right now?
I don't know. My racing should be the least of anybody's concern, and probably the thing that I should be like the least known for, because it's not all that prolific at the end of the day. I had knee surgery about a year ago, and it's been a little bit of a problematic like comeback. And I'm happy with where I'm at though, and whether or not I toe the line in another ultra, I don't know. I hope to find something that's really meaningful to me. I'm very, very much focused though on my professional development, and just the way, just what I do with athletes, and kind of the way that I operate my coaching. It precludes me from a lot of racing, to be honest with you. Like I'll never run Western States because I'll always have elite athletes in the race, and I would far rather be on the sidelines and giving them ice baths and maybe a word of encouragement or something like that during the race than I'd rather do the race myself, hands down, unequivocally. That's a no-brainer type of action for me. And I can say the same about a lot of the other big races out there. I'm kind of planning my travel season right now that the lotteries are over and athletes are trying to figure out where they're going in the world and stuff like that. And so that dings up my time a lot, and I'm okay with that. I'm a coach first, and I'm not even athlete second or third or 10th or 100th. Like that's very, very far down the line. So I don't know how to answer your question. I would hope to get out there in some sort of small capacity. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it or, anything like that. But I just hope to be healthy enough when I'm 60 and 70 to maybe make the tour around Mont Blanc or something like that when, when I no longer coach people and things like that. That's my real athletic goal in life. Is to do these things when I'm retired, and I don't have to worry about giving an ice bath or a word of encouragement to somebody at mile 80 of the Western States 100.
Yeah, I ask for obvious reasons. I love seeing you out on the line. I love seeing you taking part in the events and all that kind of stuff. But I also ask for personal reasons because I got this book from you a while ago that you signed for me. Do you remember this story, Koop?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I have that same book.
Koop signed it for me, and I'll talk about it in the intro. But basically,
oh wow,
Koop challenged me to beat him at any event. But it's a funny story that I'll have to share later on. I'll share it in the intro. But
that's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah, I'll use it for the intro. But
that's perfect.
Koop, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your evening. How is the weather in France? Are you guys getting snow? Because we're not getting anything in Colorado. Just to kind of wrap this up.
Yeah, we got one big dump like 2 weeks ago, and then nothing. So it's been endless like thaw-free cycle. So everything is like nasty, bulletproof ice. So it's kind of miserable, to be honest with you. Maybe that'll pick back up in the next couple of weeks, but it's been kind of a challenging beginning to the winter. But this is all new to me. I've been to Chamonix a lot over the course of my coaching career, always in August for the UTMB races. And this will be my first like full-fledged winter here. I was here last year. I moved here about 12 months ago, but I just had surgery. So I was just crutching around everywhere and just kind of cooped up in the chalet. But I hope to get out and experience a little bit more. So you can ask me in 3 months how it all went down, and I'll have a much different perspective on it.
Yeah, Western Colorado is... Go ahead.
I was going to ask when we can see you stateside again. What's the next plan to come back to a race for coaching
I'm
support?
yeah, I'm definitely going to be back for Western States and Hard Rock. That's an inevitability, and I don't know if I'm going to be back in advance of that. I'm kind of at a coin flip between Black Canyons and Tarawera right now, and I kind of don't know where that's going to land. So definitely Western States, definitely Hard Rock, and then there's the potential for something in something in February. I'm literally like 3/4 of the way of kind of working that out for the first 3/4 of next year. Like right now, just where I'm going to be, because everybody's almost settled, not completely, but almost settled.
Well, we'll definitely keep tabs on you, Koop. Thank you so much for the conversation. We loved hearing about Koop AI and the future of the sport. So thanks for taking some time out of your day.
Yeah, always happy to talk about stuff like this.
Thanks, Coop.
Thanks, guys.